Dzień dobry. Jerzy Woźniakiewicz, dyrektor Wojewódzkiej Biblioteki Publicznej w Krakowie. Pragnę Państwa serdecznie powitać już po raz 7 na krakowskim festiwalu komiksu. 7, tak, 7 raz. Zleciało. Artur, Wabik.
Bardzo szybko. Zleciało bardzo szybko.
Zleciało bardzo szybko i ogromnie cieszymy się, że z roku na rok festiwal może gościć coraz większe grono wielbicieli komiksu. Jest nam niezmiernie miło, bo ten festiwal powstaje przede wszystkim dzięki zapaleńcom, ludziom, którzy dla komiksu potrafią zrobić prawie wszystko i za darmo lub prawie za darmo. Powstaje dzięki prężnej ekipie Arteteki Wojewódzkiej Biblioteki Publicznej w Krakowie i naszym partnerom, Krakowskiemu Stowarzyszeniu Komiksowemu, Krakowskiemu Biuru Festiwalowemu. I dzięki temu możemy co roku spotykać się tutaj, zapraszać gwiazdy nie tylko z Polski i z zagranicy i rozmawiać z Państwem o komiksach, pokazywać Państwu interesujące premiery, bo również tego roku mnóstwo, jak mówi Artur, mnóstwo, ja chciałem skromnie powiedzieć, kilka możemy Państwu zaprezentować. Szanowni Państwo, bardzo dziękujemy, że jesteście tutaj z nami. To nadaje sens temu, co robimy i miejmy nadzieję, że w przyszłym roku będziemy mogli Państwu zaprezentować jeszcze bardziej atrakcyjny program, spotkać się w jeszcze szerszym gronie. Życzę Państwu, aby te 2 dni spotkań z obrazkami, dymkami i ich autorami były jak najbardziej udane, dały Państwu mnóstwo satysfakcji. Życzę miłej zabawy. Festiwal uważam za oficjalnie otwarty. Oddaję głos Arturowi Wabikowi.
Bardzo dziękujemy, brawa. Drodzy Państwo, bardzo serdecznie witam tak licznie zgromadzoną publiczność, która przyszła posłuchać naszych głównych gości tegorocznych, szwedzkich artystów Maxa Anderssona i Larsa Sjunessona. Zapraszam Panów tutaj do nas z okazji wydania ich najnowszego w Polsce albumu Bośniacki Płaski Pies, albumu owianego pewną już legendą środowiskową, ale o tym powiemy sobie więcej za moment już z gośćmi. Włączysz? Nie wpiąłem się. Gra. Raz. Raz, dwa. O, super, już mamy opanowany sprzęt. To dla Was, panowie. Tak, czy mnie słychać? Testujemy nowe rozwiązania technologiczne, zaawansowane, tak jak mikroporty. Raz. Raz, lewa. Raz, dwa, lewa. Dobra. Drodzy Państwo, będę tak mówił teraz, a w dół trochę. Raz. No, nie udały się rozwiązania techniczne, ale to nie szkodzi, bo będziemy nad tym pracować w kolejnych edycjach. Drodzy Państwo, spotkanie będzie w języku angielskim. Mam nadzieję, że Państwo posługują się nim biegle. Jeśli nie, to nałożymy napisy później w filmie, który zostanie opublikowany na YouTubie. Więc teraz Państwo będą mogli się skupić na doznaniach wizualnych, a później skonfrontować to z treścią. So, hello, I'm very glad to see you here in Krakow. After a few adventures on the way, you finally managed to come for the 7th Krakow Comic Festival. So, hello.
Hi, thanks a lot. Hello. Oh, you have?
Okay. It is working now.
So, hi.
Hi.
Good.
We're really happy to be here. It's the first time in Krakow for both of us, I think, and we didn't have time to see very much yet, but yeah, it'll be really nice to talk to you now.
So we are meeting here mostly because of the Bosnian Flat Dog, a new comic book that is recently published by Kultura Gniewu. I see Szymon Holzman here, standing just behind the operator. The publisher of this book. The book is legendary already because it was supposed to be published about 10 years ago, and we've been waiting for that very long. Each time anyone was checking new emissions, new books at the Kultura Gniewu website, he was seeing that book And this is why people started to not to believe that it will ever be published, but it is. So tell us a little more about the circumstances of making of this book, because it's fresh in Poland, but it's quite old, actually.
Yeah, I think it was printed the first time in 2004, then it was finished. But then we had been working on it for a few years. Everything is the story behind the book is also a part of the story in the book, because it's a kind of reportage, but we decided to do it in a very different way. And I think the first the idea to do the book came up in 1999.
I think we started out at some kind of festival in Ljubljana, and then we discussed maybe we should do some kind of story about this. But it wasn't intended as a comic story. We wanted to do some short text, I think.
We did. The reason we were in Ljubljana was because we were invited to this kind of comics festival exhibition by some people we knew, and but that wasn't the only reason. We were also supposed to go to Belgrade in Serbia because we had friends there who wanted to do a similar thing. So it was to be a joint event. But this was in May 1999, and exactly at that point, or a month earlier, NATO decided to attack Serbia over the Kosovo crisis. So we couldn't go to Serbia. They closed the border, and so we were kind of disappointed, I think.
Yeah, and then you lived in Berlin, and I decided to move to Berlin as well. And then we started to drink a lot of coffee, and we met up in cafes, and we started to sketch about maybe the first chapter of this book, and then it just went on, and then we had a first chapter, and it was written, and then we started to make the drawings. Or?
Yeah, something like that. The thing is, it's so long ago that both of us have sort of forgotten the details. So we have to make something up now, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it was 18 years ago. I don't remember anything.
But let's start from the very beginning. Why Bosnia? Why Yugoslavia? Why Balkans? And what is your relation to this area? You are both Swedish, so tell us more about it.
No, but it was really just because of this invitation to Ljubljana and everything. We had to start from that point, and we decided to go to Sarajevo and to start to do something about that. I mean, if we had been invited to Libya, it would have been a story about Libya, maybe. I don't know.
I had been. I was in the 80s. I was in Yugoslavia, in the real Yugoslavia, before it became ex-Yugoslavia. Just shortly, because they had a really good animation film festival, and I was at that point doing some animation. So I was in Zagreb for this festival, and I met some people there, and I think it was really weird that the crisis happened so quickly in the late 80s, early 90s. But I didn't really know anything about it before we decided to do this trip and the book about it. So I think at the same time, we were discovering things while we were working on this. It was sort of maybe a way to explore this also for us, I think.
There are plenty of pictures in the book. I mean, a part of what you drawn, there are photographs, there are some dolls, maquettes, sketches, and other memorabilia from your trip, I guess, to Yugoslavia. So, where does these things come from? Are these yours photos, or Lars, or how was it?
These are our mostly. It's a mix. There's some photos are private photos, actually from the. This is. If you're showing this one, this is the headquarters of the Bosnian Serbian army during the war. It's in Pale, outside of Sarajevo. So we were there, and I took that photo. There wasn't much going on at that point because it was already kind of over. But we figured there had to be some stuff going on, so we did in this drawing. It's kind of a drawing of an underground, what's happening underground this building, and there's a lot of stuff. So they have an ice cream factory, and they have some kind of lemonade swimming pool, and there is a zoo, and there is sauna, maybe spa.
And then we also built this Tito doll, this mummy. And I mean, of course, we have to put some pictures of.
There's
Tito.
a character on the back of the cover, and it has your face actually, as far as I see.
Yeah.
So you're autobiographical, kind of.
It's a mix. It's like in the book what we did when we decided to draw this story. We didn't want to do it just in the way usually when you have a collaboration, one person does the script, the other does the drawings, or you have one person do one character, another one will do the other character. So it's all very clearly defined. But we wanted to go the other way around and just mix everything from the very, almost on a molecular level. We wanted to draw in a way that we couldn't control it at all, that there would be a little piece of my style and of your style in everything. So it would be something new. So that it's always a mix of us. And I think the mummy, the Tito mummy, it's kind of also autobiographic. So it's like a portrait of Lars, but also there's a little bit of me. So
I will tell you in Polish just for our audience to know this episode. Proszę Państwa, autorzy tego komiksu, podróżując przez byłą Jugosławię, zabrali ze sobą lalkę, którą Max Andersson wykonał z mięsa. Ona tutaj jest z tyłu. I to są zwłoki Tity, czyli dyktatora jugosławiańskiego, to znaczy taka jego mumia. So how was it? It was really traveling with you, and it was made of meat?
Not a lot of meat.
Not
really.
a lot of meat.
No.
Okay.
It's more like plastic stuff and a uniform. But no, you shouldn't eat it.
You shouldn't eat it.
No.
Was it smelly after the whole travel, or?
Yeah, a bit. I think we cleaned it.
You cleaned it?
Not really,
But we
but
also
partially.
Every second day, or?
It was in a refrigerator most of the time.
He was in the refrigerator
Yeah.
most of the time.
It was hot, May in the Balkans. It's really hot, so we really had to keep him cool.
But it was it was an old refrigerator. It was also smelly, so he got a lot of bad smell from the old refrigerator as well.
Was that for inspiration, or just for fun, or to show something to someone? I'm just trying to understand why.
No, but you don't decide for yourself when you start a story. You start something and then it takes over. And this Tito mummy also, it took over the story from us. And then we were slaves. In a way, we had to do this story and we had to follow the line we had started. We are totally innocent in a way.
And this happened, the building of the mummy happened right in the middle of the work of the book. So we started the book without at some point they find Marshal Tito as a mummy in a refrigerator, but it was just that kind of a small part of it. But then we did this journey with the actual mummy and built it, but that was in the middle, so we had to do the second half of the book, and in that part the mummy takes a lot of space and it becomes a really, really important character.
And as a mummy, he has a lot of charisma. So we tried to pass the borders between Croatia and Bosnia, and people were really happy, especially the police working there at the customs. They wanted to be photographed beside
with this
Tito,
mummy.
and they were really happy about that.
And if you look at it, the way it's drawn and the way it looks when we built it, it's not really just a mummy because it has a lot of zombie in it too. So it's kind of a mix, and everybody loves zombies. We know that. So it was a way to kind of just break the to just have somebody with us who would have a lot of charm and make people in a good mood, and it worked.
And what about the flat dog? There's also a flat dog in the title of the book and inside of it. So the flat dog is not something really, well, it's quite the same kind of taste and humor as the mummy, I guess.
They have them in Bosnia. It's for real. It's the Bosnian flat dog. It's the only indigenous breed of dog in Bosnia. Everybody told us that. It's the Bosnian flat dog. And I was kind of surprised because I had, before we went there and they told us this, I had a dream about these creatures. And they were in Yugoslavia somehow. I was in Yugoslavia walking around, and it was a very strange situation. But there were these dogs crawling around everywhere, really flat and like... So the dogs, they're for real, and they're all over the book too.
Yes, they are. And so, as a people from the West, from Sweden, you've been living in Berlin already, but still you're Swedish. And Sweden is part of NATO, and somehow, no?
Sweden is not in NATO,
okay,
not officially.
Not officially. So, but was there any part of Swedish forces in the NATO intervention in Balkans, or no?
Not in the Kosovo war was totally NATO, but in the Bosnian conflict there were Swedish troops involved in Tuzla, I think.
Yes, a few.
But
I think they're quite useless, actually.
But generally, as a representative of the Western nations, you felt how? I mean, traveling through Balkans and seeing what happened and what was kind of allowed by such a long time by being inactive by the Western nations. So what did you feel? I mean, angry, shame, or what was exactly the atmosphere of your traveling?
I personally, I didn't know a lot about the conflict when we started. It was some kind of learning process. But right from the beginning, it affected me. I dreamt a lot about the conflict, but I didn't know anything about the conflict, really.
Well, I was at that point, the story we're telling in the book, which is our experiences in '99. I was kind of upset that NATO, okay, Sweden is not in NATO, but still, like you said, we're representatives of the same, this Western society. And I was upset that they were actually trying to kill my friend Sasha, who is living in Pančevo, who is also doing comics. And they were bombing his town, and they were bombing his...
apartment? Or?
Almost the apartment, because it's close to where they have their oil refinery. This photo is from that time, and you can see his apartment actually in those buildings down there. And this is a big cloud that was just hanging there for days, and then I think it traveled all the way to Finland. This big toxic cloud afterwards.
So what did you want to say by the book? I mean, it's clearly a surrealistic, grotesque story, but this is also a reportage. And you have this foreword by Joe Sacco, who's saying, w bośniackim płaskim psie Max Andersson i Lars Sjunnesson zabierają nas w zabawną, ale bardzo niepokojącą wycieczkę przez straumatyzowany bałkański krajobraz zamieszkały przez straumatyzowane bałkańskie umysły. Choć historia może wydawać się absurdalna i surrealistyczna, dotyka otwartego nerwu prawdy. So it's what Josako wrote is that although it seemed to be absurd and surrealistic, but it's still true and very non-fiction.
Yeah, he's working in a totally different way. He's like really trying to do a journalistic thing, like a traditional. Trying to it's very, so he's very careful about
Facts.
We are very careful about facts, but it's in a different way. We take we consider other types of facts, like dreams and like...
Other types of facts.
Yeah, it's just another form of reality, you know, and it's also important. But he can't do that because he's at the same time, he wants to be seen as a journalist. So he has really, really strong limits to what he can do, actually. So this is also why I thought it was justified to do another thing about this theme, about this place, but do it in such a way that I think it's not very common. It hasn't been very common so far.
So you were free of these journalist duties, but still you wanted, you clearly had an idea what you want to say about the whole place and time and events.
I think that when you do any kind of piece of art, you want to express something. If you really know exactly what you want to, if you can explain that, then that's all you need to do. You can just sit down and explain it to people, but that's not what we wanted to do, because if we could do that, we didn't have to do the book, and the book took us 3 years, so it's an enormous amount of work. So why do that if we actually can just explain it in a few words? And I still can't explain it, but the book is the explanation, really. Mm-hmm. Do you agree?
Yeah, I'm totally confused by the book still. I don't know what to say.
But so another thing then just occurred to me when you asked about Lars about his opinion, that you're both authors and you can be seen on the cover, and inside there's this inscription saying scenario and pictures by Max Andersson and Lars Sjunnesson. So how exactly did you divide your work on this book? Who was more writing, who was more drawing? What was how would the cooperation look like?
We had some idea about creating a third person who wasn't Max or me. And that was, we didn't really succeed, but we tried to confuse the limits between our work. I tried to copy the way Max is drawing when he tries to copy me.
Okay.
I think we succeeded in creating this third person. I think it exists now, and it's really scary. I find it really kind of uncanny that this creature who is not me and is not Lars, and who actually did the book, is existing, and it's somewhere around.
Yeah, I'm avoiding that thinking, but well.
Would that be Max Sjunnesson or Lars Andersson?
Do you know?
I think it's something else entirely. It's really, there's a lot of Tito in it also, and the mummy is in it.
And do you also have the feeling that it's getting stronger by the time, that it's more present now than it was 18 years ago? Then it's slowly taking over somehow.
No, I'm trying to suppress it. I'm trying not, like you said, I'm trying not to think about it, because then it would be dangerous. Then it will really take over.
I think it will transform into this mummy, the Tito mummy. It will, in the end, it will be him, not us.
But did you ever again cooperate on anything else after this book? Because you said it's getting stronger, this third personality, but I'm interested if this specific character reoccurred as an author of something else than Bosnian Flat Dog.
We haven't dared to do that. It's too scary. But we discussed it yesterday. Maybe we should do that in maybe a couple of years, a short story. But I don't know. It's a bit scary. I don't know. What do you think?
It's a little dangerous still. But I was thinking because you clearly, how many foreign editions of this book was done? As for now, it was published previously in Sweden, and then?
First in Sweden, then in Germany, France, United States, and
Czech Republic.
Yes, Slovenia, and Poland.
And now Poland, so
yeah.
It's like a 7th or 8th edition.
Eighth
edition. So and this was happening during all these 18 years, irregularly, I guess, or all of them 10 years ago, and this is the only...
No. It's a process where there were a few years nothing, and then there was another edition and another. This is kind of, let's face it, it's a very kind of strange book, and these books will take a lot of time to reach the readers, because there's no way of promoting it really. You can't to market a book. It's very good if you know what genre it is, what kind of book it is, so you can tell people that in one sentence or something, like this is an adventure, this is a documentary book, or this is a comedy. It's very, very difficult to do this with this book.
With such a thing that is not really clearly in any genre, in any type of okay, but what is the difference in reception of this book between the Western readers and the Eastern readers? Because this is clearly very Eastern story. I mean, Balkans divided through all these small nations, and I'm interested if it was received differently in Poland we don't know much about it yet, but Czech Republic, for example, and let's say France, this should be very exotic for them. Clearly, mainly because of the geographic aspects, but not only.
But
you said Slovenia. How was it received in Slovenia?
But this is it's told from our perspective. So we bring Sweden into this, actually, and we bring a little bit of Germany in it because we both lived there since many years.
Yeah, and I haven't also... I mean, it's difficult to read the reviews in Czech Republic or in Poland. I don't really know what magazines have been writing about it.
I remember in Sweden, when it came out, the reviews, it was really interesting because there were a lot of people who were saying or writing that we were not being accurate, and they were really upset that we didn't explain the truth, as they called it, that it was they wanted us to be very clear about who was the perpetrator, or who was the
bad guy.
The bad guy in this conflict, and we didn't do that, so they were they were writing it in such a way that it was a negative thing. And then we noticed some other writers didn't. They said it was actually accurate. And when I checked up on these different writers, it always turned out that the people who said we were not telling the truth were people who didn't have any real experience from the region. And the people who did have that experience all agreed that this book was kind of truthful. So that was kind of telling, I think.
Well, I can imagine it's really hard to get to know what people think about it in Czech if you don't speak Czech or Slovenian. But you clearly must have some feedback from readers directly. I mean, sometimes you're present on the internet, so sometimes probably people drop you a few lines about it, like, "Hello, Max, I'm from Slovenia. I really hate Bosnian flat dog," or not.
I think generally people don't tell me if they dislike it for some reason. They just... Or maybe nobody actually dislikes it. I don't know. Everyone who's approaching me about it usually tell me positive things, which is kind of
weird.
Yeah, I would like to hear some criticism too.
Well, probably everyone wants to be polite, and good. So, what do you expect on Polish readers? I mean, after 18 years, most of the readers probably do not remember the conflict in Yugoslavia. I do remember that, but that was the first war I ever encountered on the media. It was 1999, so that was really something very first I came across. I said, like, I remember clearly having this Gazeta Wyborcza, it's a local daily press, with this NATO's bombing Yugoslavia, and I thought, like, this is the first time I really see war live. I mean, in real time. It's happening somewhere, but I can see it on the screen and in the press. So most of the readers, young readers, do not remember that. So it's probably very abstract for them. But
well, one thing that I learned over the years when when we were traveling there, and then I was also I was a little bit a couple of years ago. I was in Beirut, which is close to the conflict there, and is that everybody thinks that what they see on television is that's the only thing going on there, but it's not. It's just it's a little carefully cut out piece, and mostly things are, of course, there's some kind of normality, or it's not normal, but people really need to have a normal life, and they will adjust to this, and there will be a normal life going on everywhere, except on these spots where there's actually some real armed conflict going on. But that's it's the rest of Yugoslavia, except in these spots where they were fighting, were just normal cities with people going on with their daily lives. They were just like us. That's what we discovered.
Well, it's probably still like that in, let's say, Syria or Donbass. There are some areas, some regions where people just want to live normally and avoid any trouble and all this conflict around them. So is that what you wanted to focus on? I mean, basically this is fantasy mostly, and some of them are probably inspired, but it's a grotesque, absurd situations. But is that what you wanted to focus on, daily life, or is it more about conflict or more about people behind, I mean, somewhere?
It's about a lot of things. It's also about identity, and it's about this really is. What's drawing about? What's telling stories about? And it's so there's this element too, that we are introducing characters. So we introduced the Skledar character, who was something that Lars used to draw.
Yeah, the book is actually, it's a lot about characters, not only this Skledar character, but also us as characters, and the Tito mummy and so on.
Yeah, and the theme of, because what happened in this region in Yugoslavia, which even there was a special term that was invented for it, Balkanization, which is when we have an explanation for the word in the end of the book. It's the feeling of having disappeared in different directions. And I was reading a little bit about schizophrenia later, and I found that this condition actually exists. It happens to some people who have some form of schizophrenia. It's the feeling of actually seeing a part of you going away, like your hand. It just disappears, and then your foot disappears in another direction, and you really feel this. So I thought that was really interesting, that it's also a psychological condition. So I wanted to see what happens if so we're traveling there, and and when we do this book together, we kind of take little pieces of ourselves and mix them in a different way. So there's a level of balkanization that's not really geographical, but it's psychological at the same time. And I think this is really interesting, because it's going on now again. It happens over and over again now in Libya, in Syria. It's this.
So it's also some kind of warning that this thing can happen everywhere. You have to watch out. I mean, it can happen to Poland, it can happen to Sweden. You can exploit these differences, not just between nationalities, but every kind of group can be put against another group. It's so easy to do that. And this kind of manipulation, you have it everywhere. It's easy to exploit that.
Mm-hmm. So how old were you when you were traveling together through Balkans? It was 20 years ago, so...
Do you remember?
No.
Do you know how old you are?
30-something, I guess? 20-something?
I was, let's see, 99, 2000, I was 38. Yeah.
So I must have been the same age, because we were born the same year.
Oh, really? So I was thinking from this perspective, I mean, another 20 years passed, would you do it differently? I mean, you're obviously older, maybe twice older even, and you have probably a different perspective on that now, or not? Or you feel like it's done how it should be done? It's just interesting for me, because we usually interview young artists, and they don't have this perspective. Like 20 years ago, I did a book. It's now being published in different language, and would I change anything? That's quite interesting for me.
I mean, I think the question is not really, in a way, it's interesting, but it's not. The book is the way it is because it was the only way it could have been done at that point. At that point, and in this area. But what's interesting is that for the reader, it's really you're in a better position now to understand it if you read it 18 years later, because you have the perspective of seeing what happened.
Well, it is actually
in
a
the meantime.
history now. For many of the readers, that will be a book, a history from a book, from a lesson of history that they didn't really take part of it in it. They just know it from
But this is
school. So
yeah, but this is also why it's more because it's so open. We're talking definitely about a specific time and a specific place, but that place has been modified so much in the way we draw it that you're not really sure if it's really about that time. Maybe it's still going on.
Well, that's what I
that
wanted
way.
to say. Yet this place is still quite resembling. I mean, you said it's modified so much, but Balkans are still Balkans, and some of this fire is still somewhere there, very smallly.
Yeah, it hasn't been resolved really. The whole the conflict is still there, and I think somehow I get the feeling that there are.
At some point, it's possible that it will.
I think some forces
reappear.
don't really want it to be resolved. I think it's the kind of maybe one of the goals of this operation, this war, was that it really shouldn't be. It's kind of
Conspiracy theory? Or
conspiracy theory is a
something that
word
you
that
really-
was invented in the 60s by the CIA because of the JFK assassination. They realized a lot of people were talking about different alternative explanations. They didn't buy the official one, so they actually introduced the word conspiracy theory and repeated it so much that it became a real word.
Like
But
fake news.
Fake news is the new conspiracy theory term. Yeah.
Well, this is a good point to start asking questions to our guests, because we are touching various different subjects. So these of you who read the book, or these of you who didn't, anyone? Good. I'll be taking this one from you. And
So, unfortunately, didn't read the book, but I feel like I need to right now. I really like the idea that you said about this collaboration, that it was kind of like fuzzy, that it wasn't like someone was focusing on the drawings and the other one of you on the story. You were just really mixing it up. So I was wondering if you had any more collaborations, or were you thinking about doing some more works in such concept that you're kind of mixing those two realities of yours, or was it the only one?
We did talk about it when we were right in the middle of doing this. We also because it takes a long time and you have a lot of time to think about other stuff, and we were talking about making sequels. If this became a real big success, then what we would do for a sequel. And I think the first idea we had we would have to go to Libya, and then the second one was Syria, but now it's already happened in Libya and in Syria. So
But you would still like try to find like a war place or a post-war place.
conflict area.
Conflict area.
I don't really want to go to another conflict area. I think I've seen enough of that now. And I haven't really seen anything, because we were just war tourists in a area that wasn't really dangerous in that way.
No, I don't want to go to any war regions either.
I just
But-
thought about it because you said you wanted to go to Libya or Syria.
But
This was in the early 2000s. It didn't. Those were safe places then.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I didn't get that.
But we have some kind of idea of maybe making some kind of short zombie story about Tito, but I don't know. We'll see, maybe.
Okay. Good, thanks.
Any other questions? Yes, I'm running.
You said that this album had to be done this way, but during the creative process, did you thought to portray something in other way or add other characters or erase other character, but eventually did it in this way that is published right now?
I think when we started with chapter 1, it was quite clear, and then we tried to make chapter 1 and chapter 3, and we weren't satisfied with what we had done really, so we had to change it totally. And it was then I got the feeling that the story was taking over totally, and that we didn't really decide what to do. It was the story that was taking over more or less.
I think there was a point between the third chapter and the fourth chapter when we had a totally different ending actually, which we worked on really hard, and I think it was almost complete. Basically, the fourth chapter, and then at some point we realized it wasn't any good. It was kind of we had gone in the wrong direction because we were not we were doing something that you really shouldn't do in writing. We were beginning to explain stuff in the last chapter, and we spent a lot of pages explaining a lot of things, not everything, but a lot of stuff. And then at some point, I don't know why, but we realized that it was completely the wrong idea. So then we did rewrite. We did a totally different story of the ending, which is much more open. It just goes on in a lot of new directions.
Any other questions anywhere around? So in the meantime, I will ask another few. And do you know how many copies were sold altogether of this book? Roughly, I'm guessing 8 countries may have been 10,000 copies altogether.
I think, yeah, maximum. It's like that. These are small publishers, or not so small sometimes. Fantagraphics is pretty big, but it's a book which they also don't know how to promote really in a way, how to explain to people how good it is, because they have to buy it to find out for themselves, and it's so something like that.
I'm asking about how many people did it reach actually, and what was the impact of the book, general impact of the book, if it raised awareness in Balkans, about Balkans and Bosnia. Do you think it was, do you feel like it was that someone really get any knowledge out of it, or I know the book wasn't supposed to be didactic. It's an impression about your stay there and about the story, but I'm thinking if you have any feedback about the impact of the book, because it's always interesting for the author, I guess. Especially in America, this is very exotic for them, I guess. What's happening in Europe, especially in Balkans.
Yeah, a lot of people have told me that they found it refreshing, that it's a different kind of take on this, which they felt that this was something that was really lacking, that they couldn't find anywhere else. This kind of open take on, because usually when everything is supposed to fit into one category, you want to tell people that almost before you start seeing the documentary or reading the book, that this is the theory that we want to explain. This is the idea. And we don't do that, and that's kind of confusing for people, but it's something that's kind of refreshing, they told me.
Yeah, something like that.
Good. So here we have another 5 minutes. So I will ask about other books of yours, Max. One is Pixie. You may be familiar with that. It was published by Kultura Gniewu in 2004, I guess. And the other one is Mr. Death and a Girl, that was following this book the next year, 2005 or 6. A few words about these two and about your other projects, because you're making movies as well, which is not people are not very familiar with that in Poland, I guess.
No, Pixie is my first book, like a graphic novel, and it was also eventually published in many countries and languages. And so my publisher, Polish publisher, this was our first collaboration, and then they did. I also so apart from that, I did a lot of short stories, and that's what the Death book is basically. It's a collection of short stories that I did. And about the movie thing, like I said, I did a lot of animation in the 80s before I really got into comics that much. And I always wanted to do something else, but all the time I had some comic to work on. But then after this Bosnian Flat Dog book was completed, and we did we built the Mummy, so that turned into a documentary project. So because we actually did also shoot a lot of video on this tour we did with the Mummy, and that's another thing. That film took like 6 years to complete, because I decided to do a lot of animation in it too. So it's a mix of the video documentary stuff, and then the other half of the film is animated, and it's called Tito on Ice.
Tito on Ice.
Yeah, it was shown in a lot of festivals, but also the same thing as the book. It's very difficult to explain to people what this film is about, and it's difficult to sell it to a distributor, because it's even worse for them. In the movie business, you really need to have a very short description of the film, or you can't sell it. So it's been mostly in festivals. It did really well in festivals, and it was in Poland, it was in Animator in Poznan, and it was in Sopot Film Festival at one point. And it's available online also now. So yeah, and I've done another book actually.
Okay, let's show us. And I wanted to ask also, did you ever consider to get back to any of these characters from your previous books? But I see you're doing completely new things. So
no, I don't exploit the characters in that way. Yeah, sure. So this is my new
the
novel.
latest book by Max Andersson. Take a peek.
And that book took.
If you are enthusiastic, you may one day read it in Polish. I see nodding head, so it's like from a publisher side, so that's okay.
And this is another of many of my projects. They just go on, and I don't know why, but that one took 18 years to do.
18 years.
But I do things at the same time. So I was working on it on and off at the same time as I was doing Bosnian Flat Dog. I was doing the movie. So there's a lot of things going on simultaneously, and then eventually they actually reach to the audience.
To the point where they are published. And,
yeah. And it's also this one is based on dreams. Even I did that a little bit in Bosnian Flat Dog, because of this flat dog dream that's a part of the story. But this one is really, I decided to use only dreams, because I had a lot of dreams that I had written down for some reason. I didn't expect to do anything with it. But it turned out that all those dreams, usually dreams are really similar. You have a set of characters that appear in different shapes, and in my case it's mostly about my family. And I realized I wanted to do something like that, autobiographical about the situation of my relation to my family, because family is a very interesting concept, I think. But I couldn't do it. It's been done so much that I wanted to do it in a different way, and I thought this is an interesting way to just use the dreams. And so it's about me and my family, but it's how we interact in my dreams.
So unfortunately we reached the time when we have to finish. So we have another 1 minute. One question for 1 minute. There is one. So very, very short question and answer.
So yeah, it's interesting that you're like taking your dreams as the subject. I was wondering if, apart from reality and dreams, is there some other things that also are the topics of your works? Like, I don't know, some experiences, some maybe emotions. Hard to say.
I don't know what other. Of course, there are many different levels of reality, but I think in the end, everything you do is very subjective. It's autobiographical in a way because it's very difficult, really, to talk about somebody else than yourself. You don't have first-hand information about any other person, so everything is filtered through the subject, and it doesn't really matter if it's dreams or if it's some kind of documentation of reality or if it's just fiction made up, because it's all part of, everything is part of the real story. So for me, it's not that's not a question really. I just use everything, and of course I use other people's experiences too, because you talk to people, they tell you their experiences, and you become like a vampire. You just pick up stuff and then you put it out again through your filter. So it's always something subjective and something different. But that's how I work anyway.
Ladies and gentlemen, Max Andersson and Lars Sjunnesson, thank you. Max and Lars will be signing Bosnian Flat Dog up there at the autograph section, level 2, starting from now for an hour. So please proceed with your books, and you can also give Pixie for signing if you have one. So have fun talking to the authors individually. Thank you.